All right, well, good evening again, everyone, and welcome to this information session about our upcoming in-person residential seminar course, The Foundations of Ethical Thought. Many thanks to you all for joining us. My name is Tim Murphy, and I serve as director of the Master of Liberal Arts program, or MLA, here at the University of Chicago. This Foundations of Ethical Thought course is being run through the MLA program, which is why I'm here. But I just want to clarify at the outset that the course is also open to non-MLA students who want to pursue this as a non-credit experience. We'll get into those details a little bit later, but just know for now that if you're not an MLA student but interested in this course, you're still in the right place. So here, just a brief agenda, our blueprint for tonight. In a moment, I'm going to turn things over to our dean, Seth Green, to say hello and provide a brief overview of the Graham School, our various offerings, and our mission. Then you'll hear a little bit more from me as I talk about the structure and logistics of this Foundations of Ethical Thought course and the residential seminar format. After that, we'll hear from the professor for the class, Jason Bridges, and our discussion facilitator, Claire Pearson. And Jason and Claire will talk about the meat of the class, by which I mean they'll go into some detail about the academic content of this course, the topics to be discussed, the readings that they've selected, some of the types of questions that we'll be pursuing in the seminar discussions, etc. So Jason and Claire will also be available to answer any questions you may have about the academic content after they finish speaking. And then when they finished, I will wrap things up with a few slides discussing the logistics of the course, including how to apply housing accommodations on campus and the course tuition. So with that, I'm going to turn things over now to the Dean of the Graham School, Seth Green. Seth?
Great, thank you, Tim, and hello all. I'm grateful, especially on a night like this one, to share with you what we are up to here at the Graham School, and also to just talk a little bit about why we're so excited about this seminar in particular. And so, Tim, if you go to the next slide, we are the university's home for lifelong learning. And I see a few familiar faces, but many new ones in the group tonight. And so just want to share a little bit of our history. We are one of the founding divisions of this university, and we come from William Rainey Harper, the founding president of the university's original idea that the way to revolutionize university study in this country would be to open the doors of the university's assets to all learners. He specifically described in his memos these individuals who wanted to learn that couldn't access through the traditional college or the university, and had a vision of putting our courses into the world in a way that allowed everyone to participate in them. And coincidentally, while we have been trailblazing in lifelong learning for more than 130 years, because our charter was in 1890, it will be exactly our 130th anniversary of offering courses this upcoming autumn, because our first courses were delivered in downtown Chicago in September of 1892. So we've been at this for a long time. We have a really proud history. We actually started the long distance learning movement. And so this Zoom atmosphere is one that we are very familiar with. We also have been using new modalities of approach over that time to really find new ways of bringing the ideas of the university to learners. And so if we go to the next slide, the focus of Graham today is rigorously exploring the big ideas that challenge and change the world through programs and classes in the liberal arts. And one of the things that really distinguishes us as an extension globally is that we remain very committed to the life of the mind and to the idea that individuals can learn a lot about the world by reading classical texts and by looking at big ideas across time and space. So if you go to the next slide, I'll just mention that while we're talking tonight about an opportunity that comes out of the Master of Liberal Arts, we're proud as a school to also have a basic program that Claire teaches in by day, where you can go deep into the great books of Western social and political thought. We also have general open enrollment, and then we have travel study, where we actually just had a large group come back from Oxford University. If we go to the next slide, I'll just close with a few thoughts. One is that we are a gateway to the University of Chicago. And so this is an incredible university. It actually looks this beautiful this evening. And it is a place where big ideas are born and where they are rigorously engaged. And one of the beautiful parts about coming to our university is that there is genuine open exchange. And so we really value divergent perspectives and encourage a Socratic method in everything that we do. And so you are truly part of the learning experience, and everyone is expected to be both a contributor as well as a learner. The other opportunity I'll just mention is that we offered this residential seminar for the first time in the spring. And we heard that in addition to the powerful learning, this really helped to build a community. And this is something that kind of explains why we're so excited for this residential seminar as part of our portfolio. The Graham School today, as part of that journey in innovation, has moved overwhelmingly online in our offerings. We still really believe in the power of community and in having learners that are connected to the unique place of the University of Chicago and the unique community that they're learning with. And we continue to believe that in-person and residential learning provides very unique and powerful benefits. And so increasingly, as our learners have now been all over the world, we have begun to see our own campus as a travel study destination. And this idea of how can we add not only to your knowledge, but also to your experience and to your community. And so the residential seminar has become one of the really exciting opportunities that we've developed for the purpose of ensuring that our knowledge can be embedded in experience and embedded in community, even as we remain global in our footprint. And so with that, let me turn it over to Tim, who will walk you through, and I look forward to the night ahead.
Thank you very much, Seth. So before we hear from Jason and Claire about the academic content of this course, I have just a few slides to run through to help orient us all about the basic structure of this residential seminar format. So as Seth just mentioned, the impetus behind these residential seminars emerged from discussions we had at the Graham School about what our offerings would look like in the post-pandemic world. And just like we send some Graham students to Oxford every year, and we've done trips to Greece and to the Holy Land, the thought was that for our new students that are coming from outside Chicago in the virtual world, and even for some of the students in Chicago itself, our Hyde Park campus is a travel destination in and of itself. And so that's how this idea for the residential seminar came to be. Seth mentioned that we had our first one last spring. The inaugural residential seminar was held just a few weeks ago in May. The topic for that course was Humanistic Inquiry. And for that, we had students travel in from California, Oregon, Boston, New York, and a handful in Chicago as well, to come join us on campus for a week, studying across the humanities discipline in literature, philosophy, film, and a few other topics. This is a photo of William Veeder, who is a professor in the English department, leading that group through an exercise of close reading of an F. Scott Fitzgerald short story. And I have a quote on the screen from one of the participants saying, "I will never be the same again," with periods for emphasis in between. Very much enjoying the experience. And here's that same group in another building. I think that they're reading some poems of Blake here. But another quote here saying that the unexpected transformative learning experience, very grateful for it, hunger for more knowledge. These are the kinds of things we like to hear from our students after the conclusion of a program like that. So our next residential seminar, and the reason that we're all here tonight, is going to be scheduled in late September. And as you know, the topic is the foundations of ethical thought. Students in this class will be pursuing that topic under the tutelage of Jason Bridges, who is a professor in our philosophy department, and with Claire Pearson, who's a longtime instructor in our basic program of liberal education. So as promised, we'll be hearing from both of them in just a moment, but I just have another brief word to say about the structure of how these residential seminars will work. So first, students in this course in September will be grappling with a fairly diverse group of thinkers. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list of all the thinkers that you'll be reading in this course, but it is a good sampling. You'll see some names on here that you'd expect to see in an ethics or philosophy course. Plato and Aristotle are almost required to make an appearance. Maybe a few surprising additions like Toni Morrison, and hopefully there'll be a few new names on this list for you as well. But even if you are familiar with all of these people, it's safe to say that you'll walk away from this course with a new understanding of their works. And that's both a result of Jason and Claire's excellent instruction, but also of the insights and comments made by your fellow seminar participants. So this is the weekly course schedule, the grid schedule, and I thought it would be helpful just to see a sketch of the schedule as it will help contextualize some of the comments that Jason and Claire will be making in a moment. On your screen, you'll see that this residential seminar is 8 days. You'll be with us for 8 days on campus, and each day you'll see here we have a morning class session running from 9 to 11:30, then a break for lunch. Some days lunch is a free time for you to do whatever you'd like. And in other days, like that first Monday, we're going to cater lunch into the classroom and invite a guest speaker to come in and deliver a lunchtime lecture on a topic in the field of ethics. But otherwise, the main division of class time here will be half seminars led by Jason and half discussion sections led by Claire. But those titles can be a bit misleading because there will be plenty of discussion to be had during Jason's seminars. And they will discuss the specific details of their class time with you in a moment. But for now, I think it's fair to think about Jason's seminars as the main organizing thrust of this course. If you've read the course description on our website, you'll see that he has organized the course around 5 ideas that lie at the root of ethical thinking. So as a general rule, those seminars will have a bit more breadth. That is to say, in each of those seminars, you'll read a wider variety of thinkers who wrote about one of those 5 ideas that Jason has identified. Claire's discussion sections, by contrast, will be designed to supplement those seminars, either by going deeper into one of those texts or by examining a new text altogether that addresses a topic in the field of ethics. So I'm going to turn things over now to Jason and Claire. They will both speak in turn about their respective parts of this course. And after they both finish, we'll pause for specific questions folks might have about the course content that they can speak to. And when we exhaust those questions, I will come back and finish up things with a few slides discussing housing, the application, and tuition. So Jason will go first, and beyond saying that he's an associate professor of philosophy here at UChicago, and that he's also taught at the Graham School for a few years now and is always a big hit with our students, I'm actually going to leave it to him to introduce himself and maybe speak a little bit about his background more. So with that, Professor Bridges, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you all very much for coming to this. I'm really looking forward to this class. It's really a unique idea, and I think it's going to be a very effective one. And I think this material is well suited to it. So this is, as the title tells you, a course in the foundations of ethical thought. And so ethical thought is, of course, thought about ethics. Ethics is the study of how to live. So it's inquiry addressed to the question, how should we live? Maybe the most fundamental, basic, foundational human question. And because human beings are social beings, it very quickly becomes the question of how to live with others. And so some of the fundamental, if not all of the fundamental organizing ethical ideas and all of the traditions have to do with our relationship to other people. Now, this is about foundations of ethical thought. Foundations means, of course, what lies at the bottom. So what philosophy tries to do, characteristically, is to identify ideas, thoughts, frameworks that are foundational, that underlie all of the nitty-gritty thinking in a given area, that structure all of it, permeate it, guide it. And the thought is that if we can understand these foundational concepts, we'll have achieved greater clarity about our lives, about our thought, that can inform our lives in a very fundamental kind of way. That's the idea. Now, so I'm a philosopher in the philosophy department at the University of Chicago. And I'm currently working on a book on the philosophy of action. The philosophy of action is a closely related field to ethics, because ethics is ultimately about acting, right? An ethical life is not fundamentally one about what you're thinking to yourself silently, but never making any difference to what you do. It's about how you live, which means how you live in the world, how you live with other people, how you conduct your life. Now, philosophy of action is in some ways a more abstract kind of subject than ethics. And the stuff that I talk about in that book and that I work on directly is not going to show up in a direct way in this course. But I have always been very interested in the related topic of ethics. In fact, my interest in philosophy began with ethics. And it began from some courses I took in college, which seemed to show this very surprising thing to me, that the thoughts about what we should do, not just thoughts about how things are or how we do act, but thoughts about how we should act, can be given a foundation, a justification, that there can perhaps be truth about that, and truth that we can understand and justify. I found that very inspiring. So as Tim mentioned, this is a course that's organized around 5 fundamental ethical ideas. They're fundamental in the sense that they have been part of the tradition of reflection, really every tradition of ethical reflection since the beginning. Those ideas are happiness, concern for the good of other people, rights, like human rights and correspondingly duties to other people, the rule of law, and political action. So starting with happiness. Happiness shows up in the tradition right at the beginning because human action is goal-directed. We do things for reasons. There's a point to what we do. And so it seems like there's always a question we can ask about what we do. What's the point of it? What end does it serve? What is the goal or the purpose for which it is undertaken? So tonight I made, I peeled some carrots. I did that to make carrot fritters. Why was I making carrot fritters? To have a tasty, healthy lunch for me and my wife, dinner. And why was I doing that? Well, for the sake of pleasure, for the sake of, satisfying our hunger, for the sake of health. Why am I pursuing health? Well, at this point, what are we going to say? Maybe we want to say happiness. Maybe we want to say well-being. Happiness shows up as this word that stands for, if there is such a thing, the ultimate goal of everything that we do. Aristotle begins his foundational book on ethics, which we will read parts of, with this thought. The thought is, everything we do is for the sake of a goal. So then we have this question, what is the ultimate goal? The one ultimate goal, which is that which everything we do is ultimately for the sake of. A natural answer, his answer, is to use the word that translates the word that he used, happiness. That's what a lot of people have thought. But of course, then the question is, what is happiness? Is it a feeling? Is happiness a matter of something, a pleasurable feeling associated with what you do? Is it simply what you do? Is it momentary? Is it something that can only emerge in the course of a full life, so that only looking back on the whole shape of our lives can we say that we were happy or unluckily not? These are questions that are discussed since Aristotle's time. And here, as with everything that we're going to read in this course, we're going to both read some ancient texts, Aristotle, some people responding to Aristotle, such as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, and contemporary people, because I think it's interesting to think about how these questions have evolved over time, to both get a sense of where everything began, where the conversation began, and to get a sense of how it is conducted and thought about in contemporary times in the world that we live in. So happiness, it seems like, our first topic. That's something that you could be interested in even if you're a completely selfish, so unethical person. It would seem, because you can just care about your own happiness. Everybody else be damned. Another ethical idea, though, is that we should have concern for the good of others. Perhaps that means for the happiness of others. Perhaps that means something else. We should care and conduct our lives in such a way as to show that we care about not just how well things go for us, but about how well they go for others. Now, how is that to be understood? How is it to be explained? How is it to be justified? Is there anything you could say to a selfish person inclined not to give a crap about anybody else? You should, and here's why. We'll talk about that question. We're going to look at utilitarianism, which is a very important ethical theory, most associated with John Stuart Mill, who we will read some of, but still very popular to this day. Big influence in economics and in other fields too, which suggests that concern for others is a matter of maximizing the total sum of happiness among all people. Talk about that idea, why it seemed powerful, why Mill thought that it was in fact a radical, revolutionary idea that the Enlightenment should take up, and some criticisms of it. In particular, we look at an example of a familiar kind of criticism of it from a liberal tradition. We're going to read some criticisms by John Rawls, who's perhaps the most famous 20th century political philosophers of democracy and liberalism. But there's then also this question that is related to, but different from concern to others, which arises when we have this thought that other people have rights and we have rights. And what does that mean? It seems to mean there are things that just in virtue of being human beings, maybe even animals have rights. And so just in virtue of being an animal, that's a question one may have. There are things that nobody can do to us. We have absolutely inviolable claims upon our bodily integrity, from abuse, and so on. Where does that idea come from? By far the most influential and sophisticated philosopher of rights is Kant. Kant is hard. He's really challenging writer, even for philosophers. He's just not great at making it all seem super clear, and his ideas are really complicated. But we're going to read some of him. And at first, when you first read it, you'll be like, what is going on here? But as you read it again, and as we talk about it, it starts to become clear. And you should be able to see how his thoughts have had a huge influence in shaping what came next, and shaping thoughts in particular about how democracy should be organized. So we'll read him, as well as some other kinds of writers in and around him. This then takes us to the topic of the rule of law. And at this point, we'll be shifting into what you might call political philosophy, which is a part of ethics, a really important part, because the polis, which is the Greek word for a city-state, more generally states, governments, they have a huge, huge influence on everybody's life. They define the basic structure of how we live. And so there are very important questions that arise just about that, about how it should be organized and shaped. And one key thought that arose, it was prior to Kant, but was taken up really, really significantly after him, was the idea of the rule of law. That there have to be these principles that are publicly accessible, that everybody's equally beholden to. That idea has come under pressure in the United States quite recently, in some obvious ways. There's hearings going on right now having to do with that. We'll read some contemporary legal philosophers about the rule of law, because it's a very obvious concept, but it's also really tricky, kind of difficult concept to get a grip on. And then finally, the last topic, and this will take us really out of philosophy and beyond, will be the question of political action. So this is the question that arises when things are not as we think they should be. And really, they never are. And really, they're always a lot worse than they should be. And so we always face this question as political actors. What can we do? What should we think that our representatives should do? How should we try to influence them? How should we organize to make things better? And just having the ideal does not answer this question. In many ways, this question of the means to our end is harder. And it's something that requires its own very special kind of attention and thought. And so we'll read a sociologist, Max Weber, who thought a lot about the difficulty of politics and about the characteristic ways in which people in their desire to achieve this great thing right away, the difficulties they fall into. And we're going to talk a lot about King, who was both a student of philosophy as well as theology, informed about Nietzsche and Kant and Mill and other people, and he wrote about them, but a brilliant tactician, a strategist, an organizer. And we will, so that my portion will close with thinking about him. Now, I should say that, so yes, the seminar part is going to involve, as Tim said, discussion. And in particular, among other things, we'll be looking to, although these ideas are very abstract, to make them real for ourselves by thinking about how they relate to things in our own lives and things perhaps in relation to our profession, perhaps experiences in our family or culture or other kinds of things. Also, with a view to that, we're going to be taking advantage of the fact that we will be physically in Chicago. And Chicago is an extremely important American city historically. And in particular, there's a lot about the history of civil rights that we're going to be talking about and going to see. So the Chicago History Museum is on the syllabus. We may also be going to the Newberry Library. There are places which have an extraordinary collection of documents specifically pertaining to King, but also to a whole lot of stuff the civil rights movement more broadly. Major ideas that were very powerful and successful in the civil rights movement happened half a mile from where I'm sitting now here in Hyde Park, for example, at the Chicago Theological Seminary, which is just across the midway from the university. So there's a lot here, not just to talk about, but to see, and that's going to be part of what we are doing. So I think, yes, so as Tim says, we'll be happy to take questions in a second, but I think maybe the thing to do now would be to move over to Claire. You can say a little bit about how things are from your side, your perspective.
Thanks, Jason. Tim, are you here to do the change?
I certainly am.
And if you could scroll, yeah, that's great, thanks. So it looks like Jason is still in the focal point for the pictures.
Yes, that's 2 years into this pandemic. You'd think I'd have this down pat by now, but here we are.
There we go. There we go. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here tonight and nice to be a part of this seminar that's going to happen in September. I'm Claire Pearson. I studied at the University of Chicago undergraduate, graduate school in the Committee on Social Thought, where I worked primarily across literature and philosophy, but primarily in continental philosophy on issues of radical challenges to ethics in the form of focusing on poetic and narrative forms and their ties to ethics. That said, I've spent 30 years teaching across the history of philosophy and teaching ethics courses. So it's all fun. I designed the discussion sections to specifically bounce off of Jason's topics and reading choices. And so let me just quickly run through how we're going to do that. On Monday, he will be focusing on Aristotle and Mill with some readings alongside of them, as you can see that, happiness and concern for the good of others. So you have Aristotle's ethics and Mill's utilitarianism, then surrounded by supportive readings. If you can flip back, looking at that, one of the things that struck me is that there's a lot of room to continue those discussions and pull them into some new levels here. So we are going to start back to Aristotle, but where you're going to be reading books 1 and 8, book 1, the introductory book, and book 8, the first book on friendship. Book 9 at the end and the beginning of book 10 do some really interesting things. Book 9, after all of this talk of how to be happy, which is really, the starting point of this book, Aristotle looks at the ways in which we're really at our happiest when we are focused on other people's happiness, and brings up the question, so this is difficult. Why would we want to do this? So this is the argument that I want to look at in book 9, where he really hits on the sort of metaphysical description of happiness and friendship. And then he takes it a little further at the beginning of 10 by giving us an analysis of what pleasure really is. And so I thought those two sections would bounce off well against what's being done on Monday by Jason. And then the afternoon, on Monday afternoon, Jason will be using, among other people, John Stuart Mill, utilitarianism, looking at chapters 2 and 5. I teach Mill regularly, and I always include chapter 3, which I think brings an interesting perspective to this, because chapter 3 focuses specifically on conscience. What is it and how do we get it? Because he does not think that we are just born with this. So there's the issue of how to work for conscience in society. And then 5 is a dance between justice as what we owe others and the beginning of a recognition of rights in utilitarianism. So it seemed to me that there will be plenty of room to return to the discussion that was started on Monday and stretch that out further. On Wednesday, you will be touring the city and doing some interesting things. On Thursday, you start back with me, but I was looking forward a little bit to Jason's movement toward rights. And there are two things that come to mind for me there. First of all, Plato's Republic. In Plato's Republic, this is traditionally read as a work of political philosophy, and of course for good reason, and yet there is equally an argument that this is in fact a work of ethics. And the question that starts the book off is, what good is justice for the individual apart from communal consequences? And we gradually come up with a definition of justice as partially tongue-in-cheek, but I think meant quite seriously, minding your own business. We think of rights very often in the modern world as entitlements. Rights are what I get. Rights are what I'm owed. I think Mill begins to push back on that a little bit, but we can play with some of what Socrates is doing with the idea that a significant part of what it means to be ethical is to stop trying to control other people, which is a very powerful human motive. Not seek power, not control other people, not force other people to live according to your own ideas. So I thought that would be fun to explore. And then I wanted to return to some of the things that are near and dear to me that I think move in this very same direction. One of my favorite ethical philosophers is Emmanuel Levinas, who is a 20th century philosopher, Jewish philosopher with roots in Talmudic studies, who worked with both Husserl and Heidegger. And his book, Totality and Infinity, claims that we cannot start with metaphysics, we cannot start with reason and logic. The first thing that really faces us as human beings is a direct experience of ethics in the face of another. This has been a very influential concept in 20th century continental philosophy. Now, Levinas is hard to read, and I'm only going to use a short section of him, but I'm supplementing that with the work of Alfonso Lingus, who was a student of Levinas and translated Levinas and had a long career in continental philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania and has written prolifically, and luckily has these wonderfully readable essays. Has a fabulously readable philosophical style. So his book, The Community of Those Who Have Nothing in Common, has a couple of short essays that really flesh out what this idea of Levinas is and really means. And the experience of facing the other is an experience precisely of not having things in common. How do we deal with people who are radically different from us? How does that change us? What do we owe to people who are radically other? I had the opportunity to lecture recently on Toni Morrison, and I will say her Nobel Prize lecture really delves into how we confront otherness through stories and storytelling. And so it just seemed like a natural fit to me. And I think it's going to be a very enjoyable combination there. I will promise you these are not hugely long pieces. And then we come back on Saturday, and in the morning, Jason will be moving to political action. I have spent some time working on Rousseau lately, and one of the things that seems to be critical for us to think about, both ethically and politically in the modern world, is the issue of speech. Rousseau's discourses on political economy and the sections of the social contract spend some significant time thinking about what kind of character has to be cultivated for a democratic government to function and survive. Certain things can't be said, certain things can't be done. There have to be mutually recognized limits. We contrast that with Mill's On Liberty, which is a wonderful argument, modern argument for freedom of speech and belief. And this gives us the opportunity to ask about the limits of speech. Hate speech, incitement, what are the things that, even if they have to be allowed politically, shouldn't be said? How do we discourage them from being said? What's at stake with those things? So that's where I will take us on Saturday afternoon. And then on Sunday morning, we come together for a round table, everybody. So I hope that will be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And I will turn it back to Tim.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a moment so we could do a Q&A with Claire and Jason for anything on your mind. But just before I do that, having heard from both instructors, I thought it'd be helpful again to see this master schedule one more time, not that you have some context into behind what all these boxes entail. And of course, we'll be distributing a recording of this presentation by tomorrow afternoon, so you'll be able to go back and look over this material again as you think more about potentially joining us in September. And we'll also be updating the website very soon with this particular chart and a detailed course syllabus for you to peruse as well. But this will show you the breakdown of the week and seminar with Jason and the topics, and Claire's discussion section and the topic and that sort of thing. So let me stop sharing my screen so we could all Brady Bunch together here. If there's any questions about the academic content of this course, Claire and Jason are still on the call, so please don't hesitate to unmute yourself and shout them out, or throw them in the chat and we could read them that way. So whoever wants to go first.
Well, maybe I'll go. I'm not quite sure how the readings work. Do you do them ahead of time, right there in the, during the 8 days? Do you have to do them afterwards? And then secondly, how would the grading happen? Is it based on participation, based on writing a paper afterwards that needs to come in the next month, or?
So Tim and Claire chime in too, but so the readings will be made available, I would say at least a month before the week. And I think it would be a good idea to dive into them before the week. You don't have to, but they're not like voluminously long. But philosophy is hard, and it repays close, careful reading. And so we are going to make them available, and encourage you to look at them ahead of time. You can also look at them, of course, read them the nights, in and around the classes. That's fine too. With respect to the assignments, participation, and the grade, for those of you who are taking it for a grade, participation will play a role. Also, there will be a final paper or potentially other projects, which you can get approval by talking to myself and or Claire. We haven't decided exactly when that's going to be due, but that probably will be 2 or 3 weeks after the end of this week. Does that answer your question, Jason?
Did I hear you say that in a few weeks you will have more information in regard to the paper, or did I misunderstand?
Yes, I mean, so I will provide. So we just haven't settled on a precise due date. That's also negotiable depending on your needs and schedule. It's possible to get extensions, but I'm thinking that will probably be something like 2 or 3 weeks after the week is over that it will be due. I will make available sample paper topics, which you are welcome to do one of, just if you want. Because often in writing a paper in the humanities in general and philosophy in particular, the hardest thing is coming up with a topic, because if you haven't done it a lot, you don't necessarily have a sense of how to go about doing that. And so it's useful to just have some templates. And so I'll be have a set of questions that I think are interesting, relevant, and doable in a, let's say, 8-page paper. But you also could do it on a topic of your choice that's related in some way to the course themes. And then what you want to do is talk with instructors about that. Will help you shape it and improve it and sign off on it.
I don't know if Claire wanted to weigh in on the reading. I suspect Jason was being a little kind when he said you could look at them ahead of time. I think it's some of the other grammar MLA students on the call could attest that it's best to do them once or twice ahead of time, because some of your fellow classmates are going to come ready to play ball, and it'd be best to be able to keep up like that.
What I would say with Jason is that the readings were picked to not be too long, but to be enough to offer good substance. They can be probably done the night before, but you might prefer to spend your time the night before only reviewing and having some time to do other things. It's always good to go through this material more than once. So if you have time to read it in advance, it's certainly encouraged.
Yes, and if you're cramming the night before, then you're not enjoying Chicago while you're here, which you could be doing.
One of the questions in the chat, and then Gonzalo, you've been patiently waiting with your virtual hand up, so we'll come to you. But I'd like to address this question that Jay asked about folks who are Chicagoland based that'll be commuting. What time do the evenings end? This is something that we learned from the first go round in May. We had more evening activities, including film screenings, because film analysis was part of that course. And that made it difficult for some of the commuters, especially from the northern suburbs or the north side. So I'm looking, you don't have it on your screen, but I have it here. The only things 2 times in this week that'll go late is the first Sunday when you arrive, we have an orientation and a group dinner. And then on Wednesday is performance at the Core Theater. Otherwise, the afternoon sessions will be over at 4, which won't beat traffic, will get you a head start on it.
Can I throw in a word about that? It's just the Court, which is our local theater right next to the university, partly funded by the university, just won the Tony, the Regional Theater Tony Award. So every year, just one repertory theater outside of New York, the whole country gets this award. In Chicago, it's only been, I think, the Goodman and the Steppenwolf, and maybe Chicago Shakespeare, the big ones. And that was 40 years ago or whatever, so it's a huge honor. So they're very good. So it's going to be a good play. It also happens to be the case my wife works there, so I'm a partisan of it. But she will be on hand to make that experience and that evening particularly noteworthy, maybe arranging a discussion afterward or something like that. So that I think should be. An Arsenic and Old Lace just happens to be the play that they're doing to start their season. If you are familiar with it, it's a comedy about murdering a bunch of people. But that is an ethical issue. You should not murder people. So it is sort of relevant to the topic of the course too.
Gonzalo?
Yes. Hi, how are you? I'm joining from New York City, and I am a basic program participant now, actually taking a course with Claire. So I have two questions. One, which is there a difference in format of the seminar and the discussion, or they're both the same discussion-based, or one is more lectures and the other is just discussion? That's my first question. Second question, and of course, coming from the basic program, I just want to understand, is the paper a requirement or is the paper optional?
Well, Tim, maybe you could, from the perspective of the program coordinator, talk about that a little bit. I'll just say and I can say how my seminars will go. 2 hours of me gassing on would be not good. So, and I never teach, even when I teach a 3-hour graduate seminar and I want to present some material or an undergraduate lecture, I don't just like talk for that amount of time. So it will be, there'll be a variety of things. There will be me saying stuff, writing on the board, directing you toward parts of the reading and suggesting ways of thinking about it, providing a framework that, is my view about how to make sense of some of these things. So I'm certainly open to other ways of thinking about it. And then discussion, guided discussion organized around questions, maybe breaking up, in fact, definitely at least a couple of cases, breaking up into small groups, addressing particular questions that we've just been talking about, and coming back and sharing those results with the whole group. So it'll be a mix of those kinds of things.
For my part, I would say that we're probably going to be more similar than different. I won't be breaking you into small groups. It will be predominantly discussion, but I will point you to specific concepts and ideas and parts of the text. And it won't be just a totally open discussion. There are certain things that are the things to look at, And so some of you here know me, so you would know my style. In the basic program, we don't in the classroom lecture, but we don't just leave it open either, for the most part. It is directed.
And I would just say, from sort of behind the curtain perspective, one of the reasons why we have this 1-2 punch, and I'm sorry if this is going to make folks blush, but we're so lucky at U Chicago and the Graham School in particular. Like, we have great professors, great full-time faculty that teach. They're excellent instructors, but I'm also just a huge fan, just collectively, of the basic program instructor pool. And so selfishly, as we were sort of designing this class for MLA students, I thought, well, hey, let's try and get some of that basic program magic in there as well. And it has a nice balancing sort of end to it, because you get different, you're reading some of the same text, you're pursuing some of the same topics, but you're getting different looks. Each instructor, each professor is going to have sort of a different way of looking at things, and such a huge topic as ethics, we wanted to try and give a couple different ways of looking at that. And the other question I was supposed to answer was about writing papers. So for MLA students that are taking this for course credit, it's not optional. That's how you're getting your course credit out of this. For the non-credit students, you won't be writing papers. You'll just be doing this like you would a basic program class. You'll be coming and doing the readings and participating in the conversations and all of that good stuff. I had a couple other questions I'm going to try and get to here. Well, one was, will there be organized optional evening activities on the other nights? That's a great question. And that was also something we learned in May. So the people that are residential, one of the comments was we could have either facilitated, organized, or encouraged some other stuff. So at the very least, we'll have, like we have the orientation dinner at the beginning. And some of the helpful feedback we got from the last residential seminar was once folks got to know each other a little bit in the classrooms, it would have been great to have another one or two dinners or a cocktail reception or something. So we'll be looking to do that. Don asked if Claire will be sitting in and if Jason, the reciprocal, sitting in on class sessions. And I'm not going to speak for you, Claire, but I know that your dance car is pretty full in the autumn. So
I am unfortunately teaching up in Des Plaines on Mondays and Wednesdays, so I won't be able to. Otherwise, I would have liked to, but.
And one or two others.
It's just that, I was just going to say, there's a real nitty gritty logistical question that was like way at the top with respect to the readings. And we should have mentioned, will all the readings be easily printable? There'll be a couple texts. I think it will go this way. There will be a couple texts for you to purchase. These will be very inexpensive. This will include at least Kant and Mill, Aristotle. Maybe that's just it.
The Lingus, because it's a very slim book, I think getting copyright permission to use a couple of essays, even though they're short essays, probably wouldn't go over, but you can get that book for $8 on Kindle.
So all of these will be cheap. And the rest of the readings we will make available as PDFs. So they'll be as easy to print as PDFs are, which is to say, pretty easy.
And there's a couple other chats in here, questions in the chat about some of the logistical stuff, accommodations and housing, other stuff. And I will cover that in the last couple of minutes with the last few slides. But I just want to make sure that we haven't missed any questions for Jason or Claire about sort of the academics part of this this course.
Joshua just had a hand up.
Yeah, I had a hand up. I was wondering, if I'm not a student at the University of Chicago quite yet, will I have to, can I still participate? And if I did participate, will I have to pay a fee for the, to come out there?
Yes, like new students to the university are welcome to participate, and we'll cover the fee structure in just a moment here.
Okay.
Going last chance for Jason or Claire. We'll go once, twice. All right. Well, thank you both, Jason and Claire, very much for the evident thought you put in behind all this, and for giving us some of your time this evening. And for the rest of us, I'm going to finish us off here with just one or two quick items here.
Bye, everybody. Then I'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I will too. Have a good night, everybody.
Looking forward to meeting you. Take care.
So for accommodations, if you are non-Chicago local, or if you prefer to stay closer to campus, you see here, this is on the website as well. We recommend staying at either the Study, which is this brand new, appropriately named hotel right in the heart of campus. Alternatively, the Sophie is a hotel adjacent to campus on 53rd Street, so just a couple blocks away. Students are invited to arrange their own accommodations. And of course, Chicagoland area students are welcome to commute daily. And in the coming week, hopefully before the end of next week, we're aiming to finalize securing some block rates at those two hotels. So do check our website for updates. But don't feel obligated to either if you're in Chicago or if you prefer to stay somewhere else. That's totally fair game. Accommodations are separate from the tuition price that we'll see here in a minute. And as I mentioned in reference to one of the questions in the chat, the September course is going to have fewer evening activities built in, so that schedule is more conducive to commuters. And finally, application and pricing. So the application to join us, it's a short form that's on our website now, and a link to the website for this particular course will be distributed tomorrow in our follow-up email to everyone. And just a reminder that current MLA students do not need to fill out a separate application for this. So if you're a current MLA student and you want to take it and you're not already enrolled, just shoot me a note and we will register you like we would for any normal MLA tuition course. So the very final thing that I will mention is that at the bottom of this program's website, that again will link to you in the follow-up email, there's a section outlining sort of various, we'll call them terms and conditions, including a few requirements and policies surrounding COVID protocols, policies, and deadlines for refunds. If you sign up and you put your deposit in and you have to cancel, there's a sort of time structure and how the refunds will work, and also a few other items. So I encourage everyone to read those. It's a short section. Read those terms and conditions before applying to make sure that you don't have any questions or otherwise have any issues with those policies. But otherwise, you see here that non-MLA students taking this as a non-credit experience, the tuition just under $3,029.95. And as a reminder, non-credit students will not be doing writing assignments or receiving any course credit. If you're accepted to the program, you have a deposit of $500 requested within a week of being notified that you've been accepted, with the remainder of the balance due by August 29th. So the application is open right now. The application deadline is Friday, August 19th. And we have a couple applications in already, and we're going to be doing these as a rolling admission. So you're encouraged to apply sooner than that deadline to secure your spot. But it's a short sort of application. You just fill out some demographic information and you just upload a short candidate statement. So shouldn't take too long. It's much less intensive than the full-blown application to the degree program. But if for whatever reason you anticipate it's going to take you some more time or whatever the case is, also feel free to just shoot me an email and just express your interest, and I can sort of put you on a tentative list and not quite secure your spot, but let you know if it's filling up and you got to get the application in. We had a question earlier that I'll address now about enrollment size, class size. So we are going to cap it at 20. Any larger than that, the conversation gets a little unruly. You can't really have a functioning Socratic seminar with more than 20 people. Voices aren't heard as a result. So we're going to cap it at 20, which is the standard size that we normally have for our MLA classes, and I think is pretty comparable to the basic program class size as well. So of that 20, how many are reserved for MLA students? I think right now, I think I have 6 or 7 MLA students that are enrolled in this. So that means there's an opening for another 13 or 14 non-credit students. But I should say, if there's just an avalanche of interest, we'll consider opening extra sections in this as well. But based on our experience in the spring, we'll anticipate around 20 students. I'm done with that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so we can be a little more friendly here. A question that just came through: is there a payment plan allowing to pay in several installments? Yes, you certainly can. So you get notified of your acceptance. You have that deposit due within a week, and then you could pay in installments up to the 29th of August, when the balance is due. So we're at time, and I've exhausted my big long list here, but I'm happy to hang on the call if folks have additional questions or issues they want to talk about. But otherwise, don't feel obligated to stick around. Thank you very much for joining. Have a great evening, everyone, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.